Hey, welcome everybody to the 40 Finance channel. Today we're going to be talking about Visa stock. This is a stock that I hold one of the top positions in my individual stock portfolio. And we're going to try to make some price forecasts for Visa stock. Visa has their Q3 earnings coming up here tomorrow. Don't forget that their fiscal calendar is a little bit different. Their fourth quarter runs through September 30th. So they'll actually kick off quarter one of 2022 on October 1st. But we'll take a couple views using forward PE, earnings, all those things, put together a price projection for Visa, and talk about the bull, bear cases, and everything in between. Quick reminder that my stock picks and projections are just my opinion for your entertainment. Please make sure you do your own research. And if you enjoy research like this, stock market analysis, going deep on individual stocks, please give the video a like, subscribe to the channel. Thank you to everybody for your support. All right, so let's kick things off and talk about some of the bull cases for owning Visa stock. And this is a large cap stock, so most of your returns are definitely going to be in a 3 to 5 year horizon. Large cap stocks like Visa often offer lower downside potential, but they also offer lower upside potential to some degree. But with Visa, I'm very confident holding it in my portfolio. I think the future of digital payments is incorporated very well into Visa. And if you're not familiar, keep in mind that they are not a credit company, right? With Visa, you're talking about the technology of sending money. You're talking about transaction volume. You're not at risk to things like poor credit scores and stuff like that, defaults on loans. That is not a concern for Visa stockholders. What can be a concern, though, is the volume of transactions. So when we think about the bear case for Visa, it would be scenarios where the volume of transactions across their entire network, which spans not only cards, but B2B transactions and many other technologies that banks and financial institutions use. So when we think about how could the volume of those transactions go down, obviously in the long term, there are some people who think cryptocurrency, digital tokens would actually decrease the use of Visa's technology. So that's a potential. I think personally, in my opinion, that's a long way away, plus 5 years away, in my opinion, but the risk is certainly there. I would classify it as an unknown risk, though, because we're not really sure if some of those digital tokens or government-issued tokens wouldn't in fact use Visa's rail system to get to and from the payments. That remains to be seen. And also on the bear side, you have to factor in competition. Obviously, the payment space has grown quite a bit, not just through the pandemic, but even before that. So you have lots of different providers, including the big dogs like Apple Pay and Google Pay. Now again, some of those competitors could gain traction, and it would actually be good news for Visa to some degree, because things like Google Pay, for example, use some of Visa's technology. Square might be in that game as well, because Square is more of a transactional payment processor for both individuals and businesses. Some of their technology hooks into Visa's network, so you can't really say that Square would drive down Visa. It's not always apples to apples. All right, now on the bull side, again, transaction volume. But the biggest opportunity here is the sort of decline of cash, right? The moving of cash and using of cash for transactions is certainly on the decline. But believe it or not, there is still a huge market for cash transactions. And Visa is certainly doing everything they can to make payments easier through digital, miscellaneous apps, things like that. Every dollar they can pull from a formerly cash transaction is a win for Visa. The case for Visa is the return of travel, most notably business travel. and cross-border travel. So cross-border transactions, Visa makes a higher margin on those. So if you figure you're an American business person who has to go to London for a business meeting, you use the company's Visa card. Those are cross-border transactions. Those are more lucrative for Visa. Obviously, in the past year and a half with COVID, we practically saw a lot of that stuff shut off effectively, but it's starting to ram back up. And maybe international travel, I think, is going to take a while. I think, you're probably looking well into 2022 if we don't have COVID setbacks. And maybe 2023, it gets fully back to par from the levels of 2019. But in general, people are traveling to different places, whether it's international travel or just within the United States, for example. So that's going to increase the business payment velocity, and that's a good sign, certainly in the short term. And I think that really getting back to par gives another 2 years or so of upward trend for Visa. All right, let's look at the quick facts on Visa stock. Price today at $249, up a little bit since I started recording this video. Trailing 12 months P ratio of 51.39. We'll look at the historicals in a minute. Trailing 12 months EPS, just under $5. This is a stock with a small dividend of 0.51%. And this chart over here is year to date. You started at 217 or so to kick off the year, and obviously sitting at 249 here today. All right, pulling the lens out a little bit farther, this is a 2-year chart by week, which gives us our 50-day moving averages, which are in purple, and 200-day in this sort of yellowish orange. And at the bottom here, we have RSI. And you can see just looking at this chart that we are trending fairly high over the 50-day average, certainly compared to what we've seen in the past. The last real notable dip for Visa probably came here about January 25th. Then you'd have to go back into October. And on the RSI front, we got about a 68 today. That does look like it's the highest level since August of 2020 here. So there's definitely some technical signals that suggest perhaps Visa is overpriced, or maybe it's just a run up into a positive earnings report. Taking a look at historical valuations on the trailing PE front, a 51 trailing PE, certainly higher than anything you've seen in the past several years. These are annual numbers. On the forward PE side, which is arguably more important, forward PE of 34, definitely higher than what we saw in, let's say, 2015 through 2018. However, very comparable to last September. So there's probably a little game in here where you can argue low interest rates, lack of other investing opportunities. Maybe this forward PE is justified at a 34. As far as the other metrics, PEG ratio at 1.62 stands pretty good, certainly better than it was in 2020 and 2019. Obviously, the closer you get to 1, such as 2017's 146 and 2018's 148, that's going to be better technically. Price to sales at 25x, certainly higher, but that's a trailing 12 months metric, so it doesn't really do anything for us today in terms of calculating the rebound for Visa stock. But if you go back in history, you probably want to be a little closer to 15 to 17x. On the income statement, $21 billion over the past 12 months. We have cash on hand of $18.5 billion, total debt of $21 billion, probably a little higher than Visa's run in the past, but the thing to keep in mind, even though this debt is very close to the actual revenue, we'll try to keep in mind that revenues are projected to grow significantly over the next 12 to 24 months as travel continues to rebound. Okay, let's take a look at our earnings projections from analysts for Visa and how that compares to some of the forward-looking metrics. And I'm just going to scroll down here to the numbers chart because to me it makes a lot easier to read. Looking ahead for September 2021, this would be the end of their fiscal year, which occurs September 30th of 2021. We will not get those numbers until sometime in October, potentially even November. The EPS estimate across 35 analysts right now is 566. That's a year-over-year growth of 12%. That would put your short-term forward PE at about 44. Now, at this point in the year, though, I'm going to be looking ahead to 2022, particularly as a long-term investor. You've got an EPS estimate, I'll say an early EPS estimate, of $7.11 on average. That's the growth of 25%, which is exactly the kind of rebound growth we're looking for with Visa. That brings your forward PE down to 35.02. It's not terrible, but it's certainly at the high range of forward PEs that we've seen historically out of Visa. Moving on into revenue estimates, September 2021. The estimate for the fiscal year is $23.6 billion. That's year-over-year growth of 8%, so that'll land under double digits. You know, typically for me, I like to see growth in earnings and sales at plus 10% or more. That puts your forward price to sales at 22.44. Again, that's going to be a short-term outlook because their fiscal year ends here at the end of September. Looking ahead to next year, $28 billion is the average estimate right now. Now you're talking double-digit growth again at 19.73%. Forward price to sales of 18. So getting much closer to the price to sales that we were looking for historically, which landed in the neighborhood of 15. All right, taking a look at TipRanks to see what the best performing analysts project for Visa. And we're in sort of a quiet period because you're going to have an earnings call tomorrow. But we did get a couple updates within the past few weeks here. Everybody's at a buy, even if you go down to, let's just say, 2 months ago. And I would say these price targets range everywhere from 305 on the high side to a lower of 260. Granted, that was 2 months ago. So there is still upside in analyst opinions with Visa. All right, so here's my price projections for Visa. Let's go through it one by one here. Current price today is $248. I think it bumped to $249 right when I started recording this. Current forward PE into 2022 is a 35. Analyst EPS projections for 2022. The average sits at about $7.06. Don't forget, we're going to be looking for fiscal year 2022 because 2021 is just about over already. So my projections, when Wall Street officially switches over on October of 2021, so when the earnings report for 2021 comes out, they'll also make speculation on 2022, and that's the number we'll be looking for. At that time, I think the multiple for forward PE will trade between 29 and 39, with 39 being the high side in my opinion. As far as the EPS, to multiply that by, my EPS projection is 775, which is higher than what most analysts have right now. Now, I believe Visa will continue to trend upward. We'll find out a lot more tomorrow. But the current consensus is about $7.10 a share. The EPS trend has been up probably about 7 cents over the past 30 days or so. I'm expecting that to continue to go up. So my EPS projection is 775, and that also incorporates the fact that I think Visa outperforms expectations throughout the next, call it 5 earnings calls. All right, with all that in mind, if you had a forward P trading multiple of 29 against my EPS projection, That puts your price at $224. That's actually $25 lower than what we see today. Now, that's a smaller multiple than the stock trades on today. But if you think about maybe a stock market correction or something like that, I could see the 29 coming into play. More likely is probably this higher forward PE, particularly if the market continues to stay hot. So 39 times 775, that gets you to 302 per share. And that sits about plus $50 over today. Now keep in mind on the 302, this is going to be something that may not hit exactly in October. We may have to wait for Wall Street analysts to pick up on my EPS projection, but I could definitely see 302 over the next, call it 8 to 12 months. Don't forget, with Visa, you have a dividend right now. It's $1.29 per share. We'll see if they make any changes to that on the next earnings call. All right, so bottom line for Visa, this is a stock that, in my opinion, offers some security, call it a low floor where the stock's not going to fall through the roof. It's a slightly lower ceiling, if you will, because it's such a big machine that keeps grinding out. I think the bull cases, though, outweigh the bear cases by a substantial margin. And ultimately, if you're looking for a stock that's rooted in technology and fintech, then Visa is one to consider, maybe as a portion of your fintech portfolio. I, for one, have it on the safe side of my barbell strategy, so not offering the highest growth, but also not offering the lowest possible floor. Very predictable in terms of earnings growth. Obviously, we had the blip on the radar with COVID, but assuming normal times, Visa's going to operate a lot like a Microsoft where the earnings are very predictable. All that being said, it doesn't surprise me at all to see Visa hit $300. Maybe not until we get into 2022 a little bit. Certainly if COVID flare-ups come up and people start worrying about travel, it could have some down days. But long term, I'm a long holder, and I believe Visa does see $300. All right, guys, let me know what you think about Visa in the comments below. Give me a like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps the channel. We'll see you on the next video.